right, thank you, Mr. Sand. Ms. Sorgan, last word.
Thank you, Your Honor. Oops. Let's not trip over quotes here. Well, I'm glad that Mr. Sand told us that he's not bashing the police because could have fooled me. I'd like to remind you all of an instruction that you're going to get. What counsel says isn't evidence. What I say is not evidence. Mr. Sand says isn't evidence. Evidence. It's what's on the table. It's what you heard out of that witness stand right there. So I'd like to go through Mr. Sand's points. You heard him say a lot during the course of this trial. This is important to Nichole. This is important. You know who else it's important to? Anita's family, who have been sitting here throughout this whole thing. This is important to the community of Minot. This is important to my office. This is important to MPD. It wasn't just important to Nichole. Now, I do not discount. It is absolutely important to her. I know it is. Mr. Sand told you about, it's got to be like 300 elements. It's got to all line up just for everything to work. That's life, folks. Think about using your common sense and experience. How do things have to line up in order for something else to happen? Every step we take in life leads to something else. He questioned about Laura saying that she was with Marty the entire weekend. The weekend of the first weekend of June of 2007. 18 months later, when Marty committed suicide and they had his funeral, she was with someone else. There's no indication that she was having an affair or that there was an issue the weekend that Anita died. That's a red herring. Mr. Sand wants to continue to harp on that Sergeant Asham didn't review the file. He kept saying, didn't review the file. He left a word out of there. Entire file. She didn't work the entire file because she had a partner, Detective Talbot. They split up the work. That much evidence to go through? One person can't do it alone. In fact, you even heard the defense's own expert, Mr. Counts. I glanced at some things. I glanced at it. He didn't do a deep dive on absolutely everything in this file. It was his own testimony. Now, nowhere did you hear that the state's theory of this case is that Nichole went to sleep at the farm, woke up in the middle of the night, made a mad dash to Minot, killed Anita. From the timeline that you saw, and from the statement that she gave to her Aunt Brenda, she left the 41 Club in Russo and went back to the apartment in Minot to get clothes, where she encounters Anita. Anita, who thought she had the apartment all to herself that weekend because Nichole went home every weekend. Anita was not expecting Nichole to show up at home. So her bedroom door was not locked. You heard the testimony from Gordon. Anita's bedroom door was open when they went into that apartment. It wasn't closed. And I'd also like to get back to another point about Gordon's testimony. Mr. Sand told you that Gordon told you the screen was in the yard. Gordon didn't know that because Marty had picked up the screen during his morning rounds and taken it to his shop before Gordon showed up. Gordon wouldn't have seen it in the yard. Now, there has been a lot mentioned about cold justice. That they came to town for 7 days. And in 7 days, cracked the case wide open. That's what we just heard. You heard Sergeant Asham tell you that they had the case file a couple of months ahead of time so that they could review everything. They came to town for 7 to 10 days for filming and for some interviews. But that this was a collaborative effort and that cold justice was not calling the shots. Cold justice does not make charging decisions in Ward County, North Dakota. Minot PD doesn't even make charging decisions in Ward County, North Dakota. Mr. Sand kept saying MPD can't get things right because the time couldn't be spared. Yeah, cold justice. Kelly Siegler and Steve Spingola came to town. And you heard the testimony from their own expert. Kelly Siegler, seasoned prosecutor. Steve Spingola was a lieutenant with Milwaukee Homicide. These are people with experience who assisted the MPD in this investigation. These weren't just two random people from Hollywood, not two Hollywood people or Hollywood personas that came in. These are people who actually have worked cases before. Mr. Sand tells you that greed is putting pressure on these people, that there's millions of dollars to be made. Not in my paycheck. Not in Mr. Nelson's paycheck, certainly not in Sergeant Ashton's paycheck. The only person that you've heard has any financial benefit from this case so far is Mr. Counts. Got his $10,000 expert fee. The only person that you heard has made any money off of this. And you heard Mr. Sand saying, I spent half my week up here going through with witnesses. You're right. On cross-examination, when you were asking them about things that were extraneous to the case. It is not improper to prep witnesses. In fact, that's trial tactics 101. They teach you that in law school. You don't ever ask a question to which you don't already know the answer. So you prep your witnesses, you meet with them. This trial could have been a whole lot longer if we'd have had the witnesses testify to absolutely everything that was in this case file. But we didn't. We had to boil it down to what was relevant and what was important. You've already been here long enough without having to get through that. So he's refreshing witnesses' recollection for investigations that they did 18 years ago. Are you surprised? And then he asks you, oh, but they get forgiven for that, for not remembering something 18 years ago when they've worked how many other investigations since then? But Nichole, not remembering something is a bad thing. Okay, let's explore that. If you're the suspect in a murder and you know that your alibi is important, that your whereabouts are important, wouldn't you know that information cold, no matter how many times you're asked about it? And again, let's look at the timing of these interviews. June 4th, 2007, the date that Anita's body was discovered. June 11th, 2007, a week later. Not enough time for a loss of memory. And remember, in that interview, that's the one that Sergeant Goodman said she was not telling him the truth, and he had to confront her on it. May 6th, 2010. Not even 3 years later. And then the last interview, March 12th, 2022. 15 years after the original interview. So the main interviews, when it was fresh and it was new and there was no time to forget. And you would expect her, wouldn't you, to know where she was if she knows that she's a suspect for a murder. Are you going to expect Detective Barnard to remember something 18 years later when he's retired twice and worked how many cases in the interim? Same thing for Sergeant Goodman. Interim. Same thing for Sergeant Goodman. Detective Thompson. cast of characters. I would like to correct something that Mr. Sand told you. 2 people coming in after, one of whom having drug problems. If you remember the testimony, William May went to St. Cloud for PTSD treatment, not for drug treatment. He tried to make Brenda Glynns out to be a drug addict. She went to a rehab facility to be weaned off of pain medication after she broke her back because she was having seizure activity. And nobody said that Christina or William repeated, they went in multiple times to report this. Nobody said that. They didn't testify to that. They went in once. Nothing came of it. What are they to think? Donna can't remember when she worked at eTelecare. I couldn't begin to tell you the start and end dates of a couple of my past jobs. But Donna remembered those conversations with Nichole because they stuck in her memory. Remember what she told you. The level of concern that she had is what ingrained this into her memory. That she was concerned about how this is escalating between these 2 girls. Brenda was wrong about the year on the trip. She thought it was 2007. It was 2008. What's important is that trip happened. And then Nichole confessed information to her during that. And also, Brenda didn't say that she flew to New Mexico. She said she rode with her ex-husband and then rode back with Nichole. So if we're going to nitpick testimony, let's remember it right. Mr. Sand told you this stuff comes out in these towns about the holdbacks, about the information. Yeah, because Nichole talked about it. She told people. That's how they knew. You heard people tell you that she told them these holdbacks. Mr. Sand is correct. The defense has absolutely no obligation to investigate. But they did. And their own expert didn't even really review the file particularly well, did he? He acknowledged several mistakes that he made in that, such as Devon Hall broke into the apartment complex that's the same building as Anita. You heard him admit, nope, I screwed up. I made a mistake on that. I was wrong. Wasn't the same building. You also heard him say he didn't hear the testimony of these witnesses. And he also didn't review prior deposition testimony from them. Mr. Sand told you, look at the DNA report and look who wasn't tested. You're going to have one heck of a time figuring out who wasn't tested. This lab report is 35 pages long. And you will see that Devon Hall's name is in it. He was tested. They got in a sample from him to review against. You also heard that Nichole was crying at the scene in that very first statement. Yep, she was crying. After she'd been told that if she didn't get there, they were going to come get her. After, that's just my crackhead roommate. I'm not dealing with it. Without any information of what was going on at that apartment, not why are the police trying to get a hold of me? Not what is happening at my apartment. Was there a break-in? Is something missing? No questions whatsoever. And that struck investigators as odd. No concern over Anita whatsoever. You've been told this is a nice North Dakota woman who referred to her roommate as a fucking bitch, fucking cunt. Told her family, I'm fine because I didn't really like Anita anyway. And was more concerned about what happened to that pink iPod of hers than about her deceased roommate, who at one point in an interview, she said, she was my best friend. I looked up to her. I wanted to be like her. Mr. Sand told you that Sergeant Asham was shocked by the train report. No, she wasn't. But in any event, you can judge for yourself what Sergeant Asham's reaction to that was. But I would like to remind you, she had a partner. That would be Detective Talbot. She worked the Devon Hall angle. She's the one who reviewed the train reports. She's the one who reviewed that video, spoke with those witnesses, who confirmed that Devon Hall was in Montana and didn't leave Montana until that train departed to head to Minot, which did not arrive until 9:20 p.m. on June 3rd, 2007, at which point in time Anita had been dead since 5 a.m. that morning. And again, this was not Devon Hall's knife. Lastly, that was one of the last points that Mr. Sand brought up. Devon Hall, in an interview, said it looked like a knife that he had taken from Jerome Vivier's, but that he had returned to Jerome's house after having it about a day. And Nova Wetsit brought that knife to the police. You heard testimony that that knife, Jerome's knife, that Devon supposedly had, was turned in to MPD and placed into their evidence. So it could not possibly be the murder and arrest weapon that had been left on Anita's bed, because it was in Nova Wetsit's possession to turn into Minot PD later. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, after reviewing the totality of everything, once again, we urge you to find the defendant guilty. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Sorgan. Members of the jury,